Buddy, can you see us? Yes, we're live now. Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. We are going to find out today what makes a perfect software for inventory management, and at the same time, we're going to find out what is inventory management. What do you need to consider? Is it really as easy as just forecasting a little bit what you need to reorder next and then purchasing that? Well, little spoiler, it's not. It's quite complicated, and we're going to think of every little feature that you need to actually, get all the sales possible. So let's get right into it with the guys from Skupreme, Francisco and Eli, after this little trailer.
Amazing.
All right, I hope you like that, guys. So welcome, Francisco. Welcome, Eli. Maybe you want to just say some quick words about
Yes.
yourselves and about Skupreme. What made Skupreme?
Oh, sure. David, yeah, thanks so much for having us. My name is Eli. I'm founder of Skupreme, and as David mentioned, we're here to discuss supply chain best practices. Our story started, I'd say, with the brand 6 years ago, where it must have been 3.5 years ago. We were running three concurrent supply chain models. None of them matched, and our business kind of went into this sawtooth growth curve. We see this happen all the time. And so, with best practices in place, we were able to overcome that. And over the last 3 years, our business has actually tripled in size. So, I'm really excited to speak more about best practices, about what we're doing here. And I'll hand it over to Francisco.
Hey, hey, how's it going? Can you hear me, David?
Yes, perfectly.
Awesome. Well, yes, story started like that. It's been quite a journey since we were using spreadsheets to manage inventory, and I mean, we took it into our own hands, and we spoke to a ton of professionals in the area that suffer the same pain points than us, and we kind of put it down into a platform and with the help of the development team at Supreme, what we came to make is a great supply chain management tool that also leverages machine learning and artificial intelligence to keep your business always in stock and to simplify processes and automate a ton of time takers that would take us hundreds of hours to go through processes, manual data entry, and tons of processes that would be prone to human error that we were able to fix and simplify in a set of tools that are now available to the public. Yep.
Very cool. So you are also brand owners, sellers yourself. Did I understand that? Or you
Yeah.
were?
Originally, brand, no, we still are operating our brand on Amazon multi-channel internationally, actually. So yeah, we built this around the needs of our brand, and then we started working with different types of clients, wholesalers, agencies, management agencies, aggregators. So really, what started as the needs of what we can consider a small Amazon brand grew to the needs of, I guess, much larger scale corporations.
Yep. And in the process, we've been able to help a ton of sellers to standardize their processes, implement best practices, and also expand their businesses by going multi-channel and omni-channel. Um, so yeah, not only business owners or business operators, but we help a ton of people as well increase their revenue and increase their presence online.
Very cool. Well, I'm very glad you're here because I don't have a clue about inventory management. I'm just a PPC guy. I do the ads, and I'm always frustrated when my great campaigns are not helping out as they should because the product is not in stock anymore. So,
And David, that's a great point because this is a pain point that really all sellers share. The supply chain is not a problem; it's not an issue until it becomes an issue. And when it is an issue, it's normally 3 to 6 months too late. And as some of us may know, it normally takes up to a year to resolve. If, especially, if, for instance, you're ordering from China, lead times, cash to cash can be over 6 months. So really digging down to the root of these issues often a challenge, and then fixing them. It's not one of those overnight adjustments. So for sure, quite an interesting and dynamic problem. And I should say this, it's a problem that's also ever evolving, very relevant to this discussion, because just recently Amazon announced its new inventory requirements. They now charge you if you have not enough inventory, and they
Mm.
also stop splitting up shipments, but they will allow you to do it at an extra 35 cents for shipment. So if somebody wasn't aware of this already, this could, if you're selling, say, above 1,000 units a month, this is literally thousands of dollars of extra overhead and expenses. So, I mean, first step is being conscious of the problem, being conscious of the situation, and then, of course, making a game plan around it. But I can say this without a shadow of a doubt. Any brand supply chain is going to have to adapt to the changing dynamic of Amazon. And again, what it may look like is someone who may have been shipping from, say, China directly to Amazon and using it as storage. That's a no-go anymore. They don't want it to be used as a storage. They want it to be used as fulfillment, and you need to have enough at all times. So just as that, using that very basic example, some of the strategies that are now coming up is send everything to a 3PL, have them consolidate shipments, send it to different fulfillment centers. So I just use this as an example just to kind of show that this is not like a once and done issue. It's something that's always evolving with time. And that's kind of what's interesting to us.
Eli, wouldn't you say like 8 out of 10 people that we speak to on a daily basis would say to us, "We're running out of stock. We're running heavy advertising campaigns, and we're running out of stock." That's kind of like the common issue that we're seeing across the board, and kind of what we're uh, fixing right now is that raising awareness that supply chain goes hand by hand with marketing, and you cannot heavily market a product without the backup and infrastructure to actually and a supply chain strategy that ensures that your business can fulfill those customer orders and that you are going into um, yeah these marketing efforts to raise awareness about your products on Amazon, but then at the warehouse it doesn't look the same. You're running out of stock, and then you're finding a relaunch in your hands. And yeah, I think there's a commonality,
Yeah,
something.
Francisco is absolutely correct, because we see this all across the board, that instead of a brand owner anticipating their needs, they're more so reacting to
Mm.
issues. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of really what we've been all about for our brand, just anticipating. We're really
Yeah.
looking 6 months, a year into advance, whereas it used to be the other way around. Something would go out of stock, we have a problem, and it would be very actually a reactionary kind of solutions that we come up with, last minute solutions. But that's kind of like the same as plugging a hole on a sinking ship. Goal is to not let the ship sink in the first place.
Very nicely said. Yeah, anticipation is certainly very big in this. It's also big for PPC, but even more so for inventory management. So I would say let's get into this whole project of today, which is to actually figure out what are the specific features that an inventory management software should have to help avoid these kind of issues. And so basically, I kind of put it into these main categories that I learned from myself from talking with you guys before. So these are kind of manufacturing, logistics, warehousing, outbound shipments, stock out forecasting. Obviously, that's the big thing that most people associate with inventory management. But as you can see, there's a lot more to it. Repurchasing, and some other areas that we're going to talk about if we have the time. We have only 1 hour time. So let's just get to it right now. And maybe you guys can talk a little bit about what is manufacturing, and yeah, what are the problem a software should try to solve. So this is basically what I got from previous discussions. What features can help manage and track the production of products? And it's not always as easy as just ordering from the Chinese, factory, right? They're not finished products all the time.
No, far from straightforward. Francisco, do you want to take this one, or happy to do so myself?
Sure. No, no. I mean, manufacturing, you have to think about it in terms of e-commerce, and what we're trying to solve here, mainly for e-commerce businesses, what levels of manufacturing does your business get involved? And Supreme was designed about versatility and covering all scenarios. Eli, if you want to talk more into capabilities that have been built into Supreme, and yeah, the abilities that users have when managing their manufacturing process within Supreme.
Sure. So, I mean, it would seem, as David was suggesting, it's a straightforward process, right? We would assume that you just place a purchase order, the goods come, everything's fine. But that I'd say that's far from the reality, especially from our brand, especially if you're a differentiated brand. Because it's one thing if you're buying stuff on Alibaba, they put your logo on it, they put it on a ship, it's done. That's not so complicated. But for us, for instance, we have many different components coming from different suppliers. And that can get infinitely complex. There's one SKU that we have that's made up of 7 subcomponents from different suppliers. So the question is, how do you track that? There's individuals that have ready-made goods that are coming from different suppliers. Once it gets to their warehouse, they're creating a physical bundle in a warehouse. So despite the fact that it may seem straightforward to just place a purchase order with a supplier and receive your goods, again, there's all these edge cases of infinite complexity. And let me just give you an example. We order thank you cards, maybe 20,000 of them at a time. And so we'll put the thank you cards inside of all of our products. But then the question becomes, well, how many thank you cards do we have left? So
Yeah.
it was like, fun when we had a few SKUs, but now we have just under 100 and we're ordering, 20 to 50,000 thank you cards at a time. And so that's just kind
So
of one example.
It's called traceability. You need traceability for your products, the components of your
mm,
products. You need to be able, as well as you were saying earlier, you need that forecasting capability because it's a dynamic machine and it has a ton of moving engines and little parts to it. So you have to predict for all of those tiny bits that compose a product. If you think
so how would
about it
you
in
kind of
terms of
summarize that into a
uh
feature? Is it like
yeah.
component tracking, maybe?
Yeah, it's a component-based manufacturing. To some extent, factory supply chain management. We do work with, for instance, say a nutrient brand, and so they will be ordering the, say protein powder in the different flavors, the different labels, the different size canisters.
Yeah.
So they're not purchasing the finished product from a supplier; they themselves are the supplier. So in this case, that's one extreme when they're actually manufacturing stuff themselves, falls under component-based manufacturing. And yes, Francisco did bring up a great point, traceability, because often we get the goods and it's like, well, which purchase order did it come from? For instance, there could be a defect, there could be a problem with one of the products.
Mm.
You look at the box and what does it say? The most we get nowadays is like a box label. So that's kind of like the best practice. So actually being able to trace that box to the associated purchase order, this is what a true ERP system, a true supply chain management system does. So for us, we're quite literally, if there's an issue with a batch, we can see what carton did it come from. We could associate that with the purchase order. We could associate that purchase order with specific shipments. So these kinds of things, again, not something that may necessarily come up every day, but it happens to every seller. One day you may get a defective batch. Some percentage of that batch is defective. You want to know what purchase order that batch came from, and you want to be able to pull all the cartons associated with it. So yeah, traceability is a great topic, as Francisco mentioned.
And nowadays we can track down to the box if we find corrupt or it happens on a manufacturing process that some item can be damaged from the factory depending on the supplier. These things can be as well monitored and reduced when you can track them. So we're able to track down to the carton if we see a defect in manufacturing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just a few other points worth mentioning, there's something called product information databases. So if you're starting to buy on a larger scale, you want to be tracking all the data points across the board for all your products. So we're talking about carton quantities, carton weights, something just blue came up here, so sorry. So carton quantities, carton weights, the size of the cartons, all of this data needs to be housed in one place. So ideally, this should be going on within your supply chain management, your ERP system. Again, we used to use VLOOKUPs, so we would have a variety of spreadsheets that we would just combine. And as I stated in the very beginning, they kind of collapsed from under us. So for sure, that level of just tracking all the metadata associated with your products, that goes a long way. And again, just a use case for us, for instance, we like to optimize our cartons. So for sure, there's the optimal quantity you can send inside of a carton in Amazon. But there's often a case where you can, like, say, reduce the size of the carton by an inch. Maybe it's a few less units, but it could store 20% more in a container. So this is the kind of data that you want to keep from the very beginning, and you want to have it very consistent. So later you can.
That almost sounds like a feature. Is it? How would you like
Uh, I
name
think
that? The sizing of the cartons and the packaging, is that something, or like packaging in general, like packaging suggestions, perhaps?
I
That's a
think
feature itself, yes.
but was it product PIMs? What does that stand for, Francisco? PIM, the product information management. So that's also does fall under the supplier management, the product information management. There's something actually dedicated to this called like PIM systems. But again, like, our philosophy is rolling all this data into one place. So instead of softwares that have trouble talking to each other, you have a fully vertically integrated solution that's keeping track of all this data. So for sure, I'd say that the line item there would be a product information database. So keeping track of that. And I suppose one thing, again, something like, we used to call it the Chinese Google Drive. We would like have our purchase orders, all of our invoices, everything would be stored, between our Google Drive, but also with our trade agent. We have an office in China. So this is actually not an uncommon practice, having a supply chain manager responsible. He would be tracking all the data. But then when it came time to say something like, oh, well, what were we paying last year? Or like, what was like our purchase order price over time? Suddenly it becomes like an actual, like a task to gather all this information. And so,
Oh, it's been a long time. I completely forgot about those times where we were like having issues with sharing documents with China, because in China, Google is banned. We couldn't share our Google Sheets with China, and it
right.
was that itself was
Yeah, those were
took a
like
lot
the
of time.
that was
Took a
4 years
lot of
ago, but this is a reality for a lot of people. There's a Google Drive. It's challenging to share with China. Then you start using VPN. So there's a certain element of like friction there. And again, all like this supply chain from like, placing a purchase order to like fulfilling it to the customer. It's always about reducing any friction possible. So again, what we're doing and what we're approach is what's important to us is actually storing all the data and documents associated with an actual purchase order. It's like, it may sound like obvious, like be organized, track all of your documents and data. But again, like once you've placed a few hundred purchase orders and you start looking for a certain one, it becomes a challenge. So for sure, just having those best practices incorporated into supplier management gives you that ability to scale. Just a quick example, we recently renegotiated pricing with our suppliers. And so this was the easiest way to do it for us. We were able to simply filter all purchase orders from a supplier over a 2-year time span. And based on that, we were able to actually negotiating our pricing down. Again, this could have taken us a few weeks to compile the data beforehand. Now it's just selecting a few filters. So really, this goes to the theme of just being organized, saves time immediately and then down the line going forward.
Perfect. Yeah, I didn't realize there was so much to talk about manufacturing, but there is.
There's more.
There's more. Okay.
Next discussion. Yeah.
Is there anything like major we left out, you feel like, in terms of features in the manufacturing area?
Well, really, like, so just probably a subject for another discussion, but just having an agile manufacturing process, you want to be able to add a quality assurance to it. So there's many nuances, even the logistics. For instance, one of the challenges, if you're placing purchase orders from 6 suppliers, you're trying to get that all onto one container. So ideally, you want to consolidate containers, and all of these are just I mean, from my perspective, computer science challenges, it's quite interesting, but a lot of this is not even spreadsheet. It's actually done pen and paper in offices. And so what's kind of interesting is now having AI and the ability to like say, place several purchase orders. And I'll just give you an example from our end. We're placing purchase orders from 10 suppliers. They're going to four separate regions. So four separate regions. So what we're doing is we're actually calculating, okay, when are these going to be done? What's the window that of the lead time where all these are going to be done? We then start planning the four containers around that. And so really like when the goods are finished, they expect you to pick them up that same day. And so having that like level of precision and accuracy, and don't forget, losing a day, you could be potentially losing a day of stock. It's often like down, like it goes down to the hours,
Which
seconds.
can mean a day of sales.
Yeah. You know, like being out of stock, even for an hour, certain items can be thousands of dollars. So it all starts from the very beginning of a complex interaction such as that. Again, many suppliers consolidating it onto one container or several containers, that kind of stuff gets tricky. So again, creating automations there gives huge opportunity to again save time, save money, and also have like peace of mind. This is just too much for like one, too much cognitive load for a human. So I'm a big
Yeah,
proponent. Lower cognitive load, make better decisions.
I would say that it's not only the PO traceability, but it's general supply chain traceabilities. Like if you understand the supply chain as different links in a chain, you want to be able to not only generate the data, is use the data across the entire chain. That's kind of
Hmm.
And
um,
I guess we'll
Okay.
get to this the same data that we just spoke about. It's going to be great because well, if we still have time permitting, we could speak about how we start utilizing this data later to, for instance, ship truckloads and automate shipments that are used to be complex for us. We now do that in seconds, so we can jump to that later.
Cool. So I also heard you say something about container planning. Is that still in the manufacturing area, or would you say that's maybe part of logistics?
So
that's
that's
part of the PO chain traceability. You want to be able to
Okay.
trace it and be able to manage the data, put it into containers, and manage it in a efficient way. That's kind of I think what Eli was trying to get. It's all about efficiency.
and to David's point, it's that they're all interlinked. So at the second
Yeah.
you're placing a purchase order, you're planning the logistics. So literally the
Mm.
day we've actually sent that first payment, we're already planning the subsequent containers. So yes, so the container is logistics, but when you're doing like import export, the two obviously go hand in hand. For sure, like let me just give an example: a localized supply chain. Say a protein manufacturer based here in the States, they're not as logistics and supply chain sensitive in the sense that if the lead times are fine, if they can get the goods, they don't have to worry about a boat crossing the ocean. Whereas, if you're shipping containers, the logistics and the manufacturing really do go hand in hand. Same for the person doing the protein powder. I'm just saying that their supply chain is a little bit less sensitive than, like, let's say, ports getting backed up in LA and issues in China. That stuff can be very random and out of, say, my control.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to leave the container planning or trackability in this feature here, and we can move to the next area, logistics, which I summarized for myself. For which features can help manage and track the movement of your inventory and your product components. So I guess maybe the chain traceability goes more into logistics if you had to pick one of these areas, but
I think I
is
can
there
answer
any other?
this question easily. Supreme offers a supply chain dashboard, and that's where the interlinked part happens. Everything happens in a single dashboard. And in the logistics, we have that feature that interlaces every single bit of the supply chain. So, to answer which features can help manage and track the production of products and how does it go into logistics is in our dashboard, supply chain dashboard, you'll see purchase orders the moment you're purchasing. You
Hmm.
can move that same inventory into a shipment, same as we were talking. Either it's a container or you can ship it in small parcels. You can air ship it, however you choose, but it gives you that traceability of where the purchase order is going to and from, and as well in logistics we have inventory. Yeah, the the status of shipments, the status of purchase orders, the status of
Sure.
planning shipments. So yeah.
And if I may
Yeah.
interject, normally this issue is coming up at the warehousing level, right? So it's like in a warehouse where, like, let's say a sale is made, someone has a defective item, you're now in the warehouse and trying to trace the PO. So really, it's like actually when the goods are somehow interacting at the warehouse or like with the end customer, that's where PO traceability starts to come in. Of course, this is also something important to accountants. So at a very high level, accountants are trying to actually get a LIFO, FIFO based. Most people use cost averaging to get the landed cost of their goods. It's a whole other separate subject, but just to quickly answer your question, I think the PO traceability does go towards the end of the supply chain. Actually, in the fact when it's in the warehouse, when people are interacting with the goods and they've been delivered, I'd say that's the kind of point that traceability comes in. And I'm
Right.
sorry, do you have another question? Was there anything else related to logistics? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything other you would say that maybe Skupreme has when it comes to logistics, when it comes to analyzing where is my stock right now, where are my components right now? That
Uh,
other
When it comes to logistics as well, you can mention that it involves the arrangement and a lot of logistics and yeah, it's the coordination of moving parts that you need to, let's say, communicate with your warehouse that you're issuing a shipment, but as well you need to, let's say, log into Amazon and um, generate generate a shipment within Amazon. But then that sort of becomes for an e-commerce business owner, manager, operator, that becomes the logistics of the supply chain, coordinating all these moving parts. As Supreme allows for automation and simplification of these processes. So the communication, the label generation, all these
hold on.
yeah,
Now that sounds like
simplification of
features.
process.
Starting to sound like features.
I mean, I
uh,
would say
you said
this.
label creation. How exactly does the software help with label creation? Like, what does
Uh,
it do?
we could circle back to this in a second, but just in a practical example, that just from my experience, it's one thing when you ship that first container, it gets to the States, like you know you're moving averages, you purchase more. Things like if you just think about it in an abstract level, if you have a container that hasn't arrived yet and you need to place a new purchase order, and now suddenly you have two containers on the ocean, or maybe you have multiple suppliers, and now one's arriving, one's on the ocean, and you need to place another. That's where it gets a little bit quite tricky. And so that's in a sense where the necessity of actually tracking the containers comes in. Of course, there's issues like supply chain constraints, delays, stuff like that. And that's where you quite literally want to know something like, oh, there's a strike in the LA port, which is going to hold up my container for X days. So
And
actually,
does Supreme know that, or is it kind of be expected from a software to know that, or how is it?
yes, there are software solutions. For instance, Terminal 49 is purely focused on simply container tracking, and it tells you every stage of the way that a container is being tracked. Currently, what we do is we enter these buffers manually. So we're tracking these buffers manually, and this is actually a feature we're rolling out in Q1, Q2, where we're doing the full real-time tracking of containers. May I add, actually quite interesting, it was only within the last 3 years that they started tracking containers with GPS. So it used to be on radio frequencies that they would track the containers' whereabouts, which is technology from 60s and 70s. So just noting that there's a lot of innovation in this area, and the real-time container tracking we're rolling in Q1, Q2. For us right now, we just simply enter if any updates we have, we're entering those manually. So that's like it doesn't seem that all that necessary to kind of do these things, but it's the thing about scale. It's about having the best practices in place from the beginning. What we are doing is we are obviously tracking like each individual container and shipment within our system. So of course the metrics that we just discussed we're inputting manually, but the containers themselves we're putting in the system, which brings up the next point. It's holiday season now, and I saw the other day for a certain SKU, I think we had 6 or 7 concurrent shipments going into Amazon. Just the long check-in times, the delays, And so it's one thing if you sent 1 or 2 shipments, but once you start having 7 shipments going to the same place and you have many shipments on the ocean, there is just an inherent necessity for tracking. That's where I kind of say the human brain is not designed to track. What did I just mention? 7 truckloads, 5 containers. It's too much for someone to track. So again, tracking all those inventory movements is important. And we do track the FBA shipments in real time. So when we're sending the truckloads in, we have an anticipated check-in time. We have the anticipated transit time. So that part is real time.
Oh, David, one feature comes to mind that I know it's a big time saver for everyone managing the supply chain right now. It's the automatic document generation. So
Mhm.
commercial invoices and packing lists are being automatically generated in Skupreme when we're making logistics plans for international shipments. So this is a big time saver. I would say this is one thing you would like to see from any platform who is doing logistics is you want automatic documents to be generated. You don't want to be issuing documents manually.
Absolutely. And this could be for a small parcel you sent for a family as a gift. Anytime something is crossing a border, you need the commercial invoice, the packing list, bill of lading. So our system, as we were talking about earlier, with the product information gathering, with gathering the metadata, it's actually able to create a commercial invoice and packing list on the fly. So it just creates the Excel sheet based on the shipment data we provided. Again, a process that used to take our supply chain manager, he would say, give me a day or two. Now it just gives them everything. We're able to just sign off on it, send the container with it. So I'd say, yeah, Francisco's absolutely correct. The documentation is a very important aspect of this whole puzzle.
And
Very cool.
another thing that many people might not be aware, and it becomes an issue later, but is the harmonization codes and tariff classification guides. And many people in the industry are very big into this. And I think like a
Yeah.
common practice is go to let's say an expert in that area. But within Supreme as well, we built that capability in to save that as part of the metadata of the product. So all harmonization codes, classification guides, as Eli was saying, when documentation is generated on the fly, all these um, parts of the identity of a
Mm.
product are being kept and utilized automatically.
Yes.
Perfect.
And this used to be many spreadsheets for us. We'd have the product classification spreadsheet, the product
Mhm.
information spreadsheet. So you can see how we were combining all these different spreadsheets, or a
Yeah.
supply chain manager was. And again, the big problem there is a human error.
Mm.
It's so many data points. It's like
Yeah.
it's very easy to be off by like a digit, and that can actually be
Yeah.
very
I
sensitive.
mean, if you're packing 4 or 5 containers with, let's say, a couple hundreds of items, it's not hard to strike wrong one number and change the entire classification guide of a product.
We've seen this
Right.
before. There's delays at customs as a result of it. So yeah, you may get the wrong HTS code, someone just a minor human error, decimal in the wrong place. They perceive it as something else. Who knows what happens there? From container inspections? I mean, to being billed the wrong amount in tariffs, and of course, going backwards and correcting that is always very difficult. So this is again just a case of like applying automation, storing data in one place, preventing human error.
Perfect. Did you also want to just quickly touch on the label creation part that you mentioned before? Is that part of the documentation or is that something
Uh,
separate?
Sure, sure. I suppose let's say
Yeah, we could put that together for sure. Like that's a automatic document that
Yeah.
gets generated and shared across the in both parties, and it's actually kept together as the documentation part of the um, as well as shipments, and we do it as well for customer orders. So the final customer orders, we as well keep the shipping labels documented so you can access those tracking numbers and all that. So as well part of that automatic process.
And I'd say
Cool.
there's different, there's like last mile supply chain. There's local and of course international import and export. Each have different labels, processes associated with them. But I could give you one quick example for us. For instance, sending a shipment to FBA. Again, this took and the labels were always the culprit, right? Because when we did this process manually, again, just under 100 SKUs, we'd be sending around 2 truckloads at a time. And it was not uncommon that, again, first we do the prediction. We can get into that another time of what the prediction used to look like. But after a day, or maybe 2 or 3, we'd have all the data. And so the next part was to input this data manually into Amazon and input this data manually to our freight forwarder or our 3PL. I say this, I'm actually guilty of this. After like 3 or 4 hours working on like several thousand carton shipment, one typo, and they have to they get back to us.
Repack it.
We did this, but this carton was missing. This
Oh,
means
man.
the shipment needs to be regenerated. They need to relabel 1,000 to 2,000 labels. I guarantee you this has happened to everyone. There's some potentially 3PL watching this, like doing a face palm right now. But this is the reality. It's
Good news is not anymore. I mean, that's
what
fixed.
a strange and funny thing to hear that, like, it's the holiday season. I hear crazy things like some 3PLs have like 10,000 packages or more going out a day. Yet, a small human error and everything stops. They relabel all the boxes, and generally the boxes are actually, getting ready to be palletized. So they're in front of a dock blocking all the other shipments. So like the level of drama here for like one typo, one mistake just cascades into an avalanche. And so, as Francisco was saying, for us, our predictions for LTL shipments are dialed into the point. It's like literally we call it a 3-click ship. It's 3 keystrokes. We just accept the prediction, send the shipment. It creates the shipments in FBA. And then, of course, as we were saying, the documentation creates all the documentation, sends it to our 3PL, also automates the messaging to our 3PL. So in this case, it's completely eliminated any human intervention and any potential for human error. So that's a great case of, the documentation and automation, literally, saving us 8 hours, but also preventing us days of potential problems and stuff like that.
Yeah. Cool. I also wrote down this recognizing Amazon storage limits. Is this something that's possible already through the API, or is it?
They don't offer it through the API. We do have a button that says storage limits. So you just click it. It takes you to your storage limit. So it takes you directly to the page, allows you to then input it directly back into Skupreme. So it's not offered by the API, but we do make it as easy as possible to get that data inputted and, of course, act on it.
Perfect.
I think also it's because they're changing the ways they do it. If you remember, it was by unit, then it changed to cubic feet. So it's I guess, like, simply put, it seems to me that they're changing it. They haven't opened up those endpoints. But again, we do.
But in that sense, when the shipments are created, while you're creating a shipment, Skupreme is helping you calculate that cubic feet. So it's calculating the volumetric measurement, and as well as calculating the amount of items, total cartons. So it gives you the ability to input the storage limits, but as well, it's helping you track every time you're creating a shipment. Is helping you monitor if that shipment is gonna go accordingly.
That's correct. It goes back to the conversation about storing the product information in one place. Because we're doing that, we are able to pass all that information into the shipment. So really, that's where the time is saved.
Perfect. So to the next area, warehousing. Again, the kind of area where I don't really know how a software can really help. I mean, to me, it's just like, okay, they're the products. The products are going there somehow, and they're going to Amazon later on somehow. But what is the software doing to get all that working? I guess we already have one of the features, purchase order chain traceability. But what else could be mentioned in this whole area?
It's as well versatility. Yeah, Eli, you want to take on this one, right?
Yeah, sure. I suppose this is again one of those infinitely deep topics. Like, let's say, like, without any tools that we're using, what a warehouse generally offers is a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet that just says the SKU and the amount of available cartons and nothing else. So from there, a business has to decipher and build their own process around it. And what's kind of interesting is every business is building the same exact process to achieve the same exact result. So in that sense, if you think about it, a lot of time and resources are wasted to accomplish the same thing. And so this all circles back to the information management that we discussed in the very beginning. If we're tracking that information, we're able to take that warehouse feed instead of receiving the spreadsheet. We're able to receive all of that data in real time, ingest it into our system. The system then associates it with all of the metadata and all of the inbound and outbound shipments. So where a warehouse kind of begins and ends is it normally gives you just and only just the data of what you have available on a SKU level. What we're able to do is build upon that. And by getting a real-time data feed, we're able to associate the amount of outbound shipments, the amount of inbound shipments on a SKU. We're quite literally publishing a sales velocity on a SKU level in a warehouse because, of course, it's not just keeping Amazon in stock. We target 6 months of inventory at our warehouse, sometimes 8 months of inventory for wholesalers. So it's not just keeping Amazon in stock, it's keeping the warehouse in stock. And so, again, by having taking that baseline data, building upon it, we're able to also build predictions for how much should be at our warehouse and FBA. But yeah, that's another interesting thing. Very much, it's most warehouses are just you get a portal, you can log in, you could see your SKU, you could see the available quantity, nothing else. So
David, I would say to summarize what Eli is saying, what you want from your warehouse is connectivity, and you want to be connected to your warehouse. You want to be able to see into your warehouse. You want to be able to control what happens with your inventory at the warehouse. So it's all about versatility. I can speak from what we did with Supreme is we want to be able to give your warehouse, and as well in e-commerce there's a ton of scales, right? So we have the smaller and medium seller, then we have the bigger sellers, and then we have the really enterprise sellers who are leveraging a network of 3PLs and warehouses. So we want to be able to accommodate all of them, and we are, in the sense that, as Eli was saying, we have connectivity through API. We can connect with the more enterprise warehouses, and we can automate all the processes that come with order synchronization across marketplaces. So in that sense, Skupreme is connecting your warehouse to all marketplaces. Um, for the
Okay.
warehouses, for the medium and smaller seller who may be not even using or leveraging a warehouse or a 3PL or even FBA, and they may be shipping from their own homes or they have their own warehouse operation going on, uh, we give them the ability to manage their own warehouse. So in that sense, that technology to manage more efficiently their inventory, and as well to take that link in the supply chain, which becomes logistics and warehousing, and adding the technology to interlace with the rest of the links in the supply chain. So by doing this, you're able to trace your purchase orders into your own warehouse, 3PL, your own management of inventory, and Supreme as well will give you the ability to, let's say, print automatic labels. So it's all about connectivity, versatility, and we accommodate all cases. So it goes from managing your own warehouse, connecting with FBA and WFS, and as well accessing the USPS network of shipping, because Supreme as well has partnered with USPS and Walmart and, well, all other platforms as well. But it's all about connectivity, versatility, and I think we have all of the scenarios covered, really.
sure. And I suppose it says which features make your storage management easier and cheaper. So part of it is protecting the downside, right? Like I hate to say this, but our former 3PL this year has lost like retail value of over 6 figures of goods. So this is like unfortunately the reality for many brands. Many brands are dealing with 3PLs. 3PLs have been expanding exponentially over the last year, and these are kind of their growing pain, quite like literally losing goods. So having an ability to track those changes, that's really important because otherwise you start running into issues like you create shipments with goods that don't exist. they bounce back the shipment, you need to recreate it. So having that ability to reconcile and actually protect your downside and know what your downside is. Like I could tell you without a shadow of a doubt, like we lost X amount of dollars this year. I don't even want to say because I'm not proud of the figure. But on the other hand, so you're saying,
But hey, you know what I'm proud of? We were able to track it
yeah,
because otherwise we wouldn't be able to, because that's the issue. They're a huge 3PL. They're using spreadsheets, and guess what? They lost a ton of money, and they're liable for it. That's the reality. And we
well,
were
actually,
able to figure it out.
yeah, people should know this. 3PLs don't reimburse based on value of goods. They reimburse based on weight, pennies on the dollar. So they're
Right.
like, yeah. But the thing is, as Francisco said, because we were able to identify the problem, we were able to come up with the solution, which was switch 3PL immediately. So
Right.
that's quite literally what happened there. And I was just going to add to this, easier and cheaper, but the other, it's not just protecting the downside, but getting the most from your upside. So very interesting fact, majority of 3PLs don't offer manual fulfillment. And you've seen this, that you go out of stock on Amazon, you have all these goods at your warehouse, but the warehouse doesn't have the capability to ship it. So potentially you're sitting on what could be depending on the size of the brand, $1,000, $10,000 per day of like revenue that's literally locked in boxes in a warehouse. And the only reason is just due to technological constraints. So actually, I'd say that this is one of, in terms of the upside, this is like one of our biggest accomplishments, that we've been able to retrofit existing 3PL systems and basically unlock the potential of this inventory that would otherwise just be sitting there. Because again, they store it for bulk shipments, for instance, to wholesalers, to Amazon. But in this case, we've given them ability to actually route individual orders. So in our case, and there's just one hot seller we have. I mentioned the 7 shipments before. There's no amount of shipments we can send. It's just not getting checked in. But being able to flip the switch, manually fulfill those items, we don't lose sales. And that's number one. If the item is out of stock, we all know what happens there. So we're able to keep treading water. Those shipments keep getting checked in, and we're able to manually fulfill those goods. So I'd say that's huge. I'd say that's the biggest, most prevalent game changer right now. Unlocking hidden value.
It sounds amazing, although I'm still struggling to put it into like a 2-word feature. If we still want to add it.
Manual fulfillment, warehouse capability of manual fulfillment.
You want to have visibility and control over your warehouse, or connectivity. I would say, like, if you want to put it in a few words.
Visibility. This is quite literally a feature of like manual fulfillment from a warehouse.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. I'm not sure I fully understand. Like,
sorry.
It's not like the software has the capability to do the fulfillment. Like,
so that's the thing. Sorry.
So what does the software do? What kind of software? Is it like a button that tells you, okay, this other fulfillment provider can do it instead if the 3PL is not doing it? Like how would it work?
Sure. So, quite literally, like the process is like, for our normal 3PL, the one we used to work with was we would be sending shipments to Amazon. We tell them to send, let's say, a 5 carton shipment to Amazon. They put the labels on, they send it to Amazon. They're not breaking cartons. They're just policy is we don't break units. And the reason is they don't ship individual units. And the reason is because their technology is not capable of doing so. That's literally it. Their technology cannot do it. So what we're doing on our side, let's say with our new 3PL, we're able to actually access those goods, because we will, for instance, get our manual. First of all, we know the amount of inventory available at the warehouse. So that's step one. By knowing the amount of inventory available to ship, then we're actually able to sync it to all of our marketplaces, actually ship it. So that's step one. What we're doing from there is we're actually generating the shipping labels, everything relevant to creating an individual shipment. So for us, orders are coming in from the different marketplaces. What we'll do is we'll batch up these shipments. We'll create what's called a pick list, and we'll create all relevant shipping labels. We send it to our warehouse manager. So basically, where they did not have the capability to do this before, we're now able to quite literally create all the shipping labels. All the shipping labels say what's the contents of the shipment to the customer, And now customers too can receive shipments from our 3PL.
All right.
There's not yeah, it's like a weird thing. Like again, one of those things that's not a problem until you're like, well, I'm out of stock, but I have like all this
Hey,
stock in the warehouse. How do I unlock this? And so
I wouldn't say it's up. It's not only a problem. It's also a opportunity that businesses have when they have a network of warehouses that have the capability to fulfill manual orders. And in that sense, at Supreme, we call it advanced order routing. And what it enables is multi-channel fulfillment and the leverage of multiple nodes in your network for fulfillment. And actually, Supreme is able to categorize and prioritize the order in which you want to fulfill, depending of the location of the in priority for any warehouse that you want to, let's say, ship from. So if you're leveraging a network of different warehouses, you can prioritize which to fulfill from. So yeah.
oh yeah, I'd say this is more sophisticated functionality for another probably hour-long discussion. With only
Yeah.
15 minutes left. What's cool is, for instance, now that we have all these data feeds from all of our storage providers, let's say we get an order with 5 SKUs. The system will actually take that order and split it between all of our warehouses, depending on where the items are available. So as far as I know, this wasn't even something that was like physically possible beforehand. So, we get a TikTok order. Someone ordered 4 separate items. It ships from 2 warehouses. So for us, this actually became a common practice. And I'm actually curious to see, in the future, the level and extent of people utilizing functionality like this. There's more future thinking. So I'd say for next discussion, we can jump into stuff like that.
Perfect. Cool. Shall we go to the next category? I'm not sure we've kind of already touched on it automatically now, which is the outbound shipments. Is there anything else you would add here that hasn't been talked about in the other categories?
I mean, this is for sure a great summary of everything we spoke about, because where we started was the product information data sheets. And it all comes back to this because like what makes it easy, what makes fast order processing. We work with people who periodically get 6,000 orders come in, right? It's like one thing to process 20 orders a day, but it's another challenge of 6,000 orders. And so again, it all goes back to keeping that data and product information. I'll give you an example. When we ship from our own warehouse, the system is tracking on each individual shipment how much the shipment weighs. So let's say we do a combination of goods, like 2 different SKUs, it'll track that combination. So the system actually builds a matrix of all the different permutations of all of our goods being shipped. And what's interesting is that it remembers it over time. So instead of going through the same manual processes of shipping goods over and over and over, it actually, I can look at our shipments right now. We may have 30. It's going to know for all 30, all of the data, and it's going to have the labels pre-populated. So it's at a point where we can just click print, and it prints off all of our labels. Again, what this is normally a very manual process. You have to enter the dimensions, you have to enter the weight, and then of course you can make mistakes along the way. Anytime there's a manual entry here, all of the information is carried through. And it basically, as mentioned, we get these shipments. I'm going to look at the shipments momentarily. I could just click print 20 orders. It's done. Whereas what we used to do 4 or 5 years ago is every single one I'd have to manually enter it. I'd have to remember how much each of my SKUs weighed and all of the packaging. This was like all in my mind. I knew the exact weight of everything. But yeah, it's like now we have just under 100 SKUs, and the system remembers all permutations of combinations of the hundreds of SKUs.
Eli,
So,
and not only 100 SKUs. David, as well. When you're talking e-commerce, think about like Amazon is having like a flagship store in New York, and then going to TikTok is like opening your London store, and selling on Walmart is opening a different city. So going multi-channel implies as well multiple listings now. So when you synchronize the orders, a big feature here is the add back of tracking numbers, because think about it, it's multiple marketplaces, multiple orders, and then orders coming in from different places, then adding the tracking numbers back to the original sales channel. So that's a big one.
Mm.
Hundreds of hours saved there.
Yeah,
Um,
Francisco brings up a valid point because again, this is generally decentralized systems that are talking to each other that are, for instance, inevitably sending all the data to ShipStation, which is a standalone software. And so again, that's where it's the communication between the softwares where the gaps truly do start to occur. And I mean, it really comes back to most people we discuss. It's like, you're selling at like what channels are you on? So Amazon. It's like, why not Walmart or anything else? It's too much for them to manage. This is just the basic notion from aggregators to just single brand owners. All say the same thing. It's too much to manage, and that's their one kind of thing preventing them from expanding to a new marketplace and taking orders. But again, brings us back to what we were talking about. By having everything centralized in one place, it does in fact allow you to quite literally do that. By having again, it's syncing all the inventories to all the different catalogs. It's syncing the fulfillment information back to the marketplaces. And that's the reality. If you don't have a process in place to do that, you're not meeting shipping SLAs. You're getting kicked off of the marketplaces. We see this
oh
time
yeah, you're
again.
getting your account banned.
Yeah, the same for Amazon as anything else. You miss a shipment, it goes out 2 days late. The handling time, your account's getting banned. We see this all the time, and so it may be like a satirical subject. It may seem easy. Print a shipping label, the item goes out, but it goes out 2 days late. You're banned and you're stuck.
Worst case scenario, you're banned. Regular scenario is your brand becomes irrelevant in the marketplace because you're not meeting SLAs. Yeah.
Cool. So, is there any kind of summary of another feature that, like a 2-word, 3-word summary, you would add to outbound shipment to the customer? Like,
Yeah, automated tracking add back is something like that. So
how does
the
that right?
software
Add
needs to be
back.
able.
I didn't quite understand that part, but add
Oh,
back. Like, what is
it's
that?
like adding back.
or tracking. Uh,
Like this?
yeah, something like
Add
tracking
back.
updates. I don't know if it's an ad back, but like a tracking, like automated tracking updates. I don't know.
Automated automated.
Original.
Yeah, adding back the tracking number to the original marketplace. I don't if you guys have a better
Yeah,
way
Okay,
to
I'll figure it out
summarize
later.
that.
yeah,
I'll have to Google that part. Cool. Let's go to probably the coolest part, which is what most people understand by inventory management if they don't think about it too hard, like me, which is simply forecasting. And then, okay, the tool tells you you need to reorder this product. So let's just have a look at what could be the considerations that tool could look at or consider when they make these forecasts and alerts to tell you what to repurchase.
Hey David,
So
1 second. Sorry, and sorry for this, but did we just overlooked returns management?
no, we did. I mean, we didn't talk about it. Yes, we can go to that.
You know how often that happens? Like returns management is such a overlooked subject, and I think we should touch on this, Eli, because
yeah.
it's
We can
big.
keep it really brief because there's only 2 minutes left. But this is now becoming.
I think we have time.
We
I
have
think
more. Yeah.
Sure. Well, so it's for sure the most prevalent subject now, obviously, because fees are so high, right? Like there was a time where if someone wanted to process a return, I would let them keep it. Now it's actually like ironic because if I still let them keep it because the cost of shipping it back and then shipping it again, I'm actually losing money. So this is like something that's very prevalent to like every seller that they think about. Obviously, for online, there's a statistically significant amount of returns. Depending on your brand, it could be from anywhere to 3 to 10%. So having some sort of process in place, while maybe 6 years ago the margins were there and kind of maybe people had the luxury of not caring about it, now is like an ever present. Like I mean, that could add 3 to 10% back to your bottom line if the goods are in good condition. If you store packaging, if you have a process in place, a great way to add revenue to the bottom line. So if I could keep it in a 2-minute summary, I'd say that that's what it would be. And it's kind of similar to the manual order processing. Not everybody nor most 3PLs do not offer this. So this is actually a technological problem, and we do solve this using technology.
Sweet. Anything to add there, Francisco? what
Yeah, it is a big
offers.
thing for many people, and many people don't are not aware of the issue. But as well, same as putting the tracking number into the marketplaces. When you're dealing with returns, it becomes like an extra layer of complexity for your business and your operation. So Supreme just simplifies a lot. You need, in a platform that you're choosing, when you're comparing these platforms, they need to be able to manage returns. That's a big one.
Yeah, I'd say like many years ago, not the case, but now it's like, everyone is at least conscious of it in some way, because like if you're not discarding them, the returns do appear at your door, and there's like, I'm sure anyone watching this, we got Francisco's seen it before. We get like just like a big the
Uh,
thing fill
and
a.
ma- and I mean, here's the thing: like, if you're thinking of efficiency, you know how many inventory is being globally lost in e-commerce to returns. Just like, hey, I don't want this item, but the item might be perfectly fine, and you can refurbish it, or just mark it as fulfillable again. You don't need to have this sort of like loss of inventory that happens when there is not like the technology to back up a returns reprocessing plan.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is not the correct number. I think it's someone mentioned to me recently. I know this is not correct, but it's something crazy, like in the hundreds of billions or 36 billion. But there's the amount of sheer returns per year is just some sort of unfathomable number.
Yeah.
The shipping rates have gone up, so this is something now. If they're not haven't addressed it already, this is something that people are conscious of. And again, we'll see for sure. We'll have this conversation a year from now, and we'll see it's a more prevalent discussion of actually people adopting some sort of practice, some way to reprocess returns.
All right. Cool. So now to the fun topic. Yeah, what would you say are like things that the tool should consider when it comes to stock out forecasting? Is
Uh,
it like just the sales history? I wrote some other things down there. What is it like Skupreme does?
sure.
Do you
So,
have do you have
as
like AI and machine learning, or is it like a fixed time frame?
We
Okay,
call it
this
the
is the
prediction engine, and it's 365 days per year. Yeah, it's a machine learning process that learns from all the bits and parts of your. I don't know, Eli. You might want to take on this one better.
uh, so repurchasing, number one thing I'd have to say here, it needs to be scalable with the business. And I speak for my own business. We it's like the terminology I use is single point solutions fail at scale. So I can't even remember what software I used when I first started on Amazon 5 or 6 years ago. I can't, maybe Restock Pro. I have no idea. But the point is that you can reach a certain threshold of potential, but then let's say you want to expand to different marketplaces. You have a wholesale client, you want to expand to a new region. Suddenly that software doesn't work and you need to find a new stack. And so I see this all the time at every single kind of level of growth. It's whether it's 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, you can't get to these levels without some sort of robust repurchasing process in place that is also agile and scalable with your business. It's not like every time you grow and expand, you can have time to just restructure your entire business operations, reteach your team. That's what brings it back into zigzag growth. So, it's more of an abstract subject of having the best processes in place from the beginning that scale with your business. And again, we see it here too. And I've said it before, you can make $1 million by accident online. That's very easy, but hitting those $5 million marks absolutely requires strict repurchase processes in place. And to continue that
Structure.
growth, yeah, absolutely requires these systems. And we spoke about it before. Reason people don't expand to new marketplaces, new new channels is similar to new marketplaces. So they just simply don't go to say Canada because it's just too complex. This is the reason that it's like, well, it's too much for us to do. It's too complex. And I was, I guess, the opposite. I was like a victim of my ambition. So I'm like, oh, I just fill out some paperwork, send goods internationally. And suddenly it's like I'm managing like Canada, UK, EU, United States, and like, scrambling to find a solution. So it could be either or. I would tend to say from my experience, find the best, scalable solution that'll grow with your business and like scale using that instead of learning the hard way as I did. But for sure, I mentioned a lot of the aspects that go into repurchasing. For every business, it's different. Again, some have are large retail relationships. Some have wholesale relationships, international. All of these kinds of things play a role into how you want to approach this process and what kind of people you want to be behind the process. Of course, you can have artificial intelligence and machine learning, but as I see it, this doesn't necessarily replace a good supply chain manager. And that's ultimately where I say this is half art, half science, right? There's this aspect of like we can use the machine learning. We learn our business's supply chain. So we've gone through our supply chain. Our system now knows that, okay, here's the containers we're shipping, here's the proportions we're shipping. So it gets us that far. But a great supply chain planner actually knows the business like the back of their hand. They're planning the promotions. They're planning the seasonality. Our supply chain planner is looking a year in advance. So he's already has the entire next year projections, planned events, whatever it may be. All of that is in the back of his mind. And so it's partially about the strategic business units with the strategic goals within your business. And it's also kind of, as I said, art and science, where our supply chain manager is now what we call it's like a super tool. So before, where he was kind of like constrained in time and resources, it was very difficult also, I should say, to scale into like and hire into people using spreadsheets, for instance. Whereas here, we were able to give him the tools that he needed and it was very easy for him to hire people. And for his case, again, we have an office that is planning the shipments from China. So they're booking the containers, doing all the freight work. So again, my basic point being is that our supply chain manager, instead of now focusing on paperwork, is more focused on a higher level of actually testing the predictions, throwing different scenarios at the predictions. Any permutation of scenarios, he's actually going to throw at the predictions of and see what comes up. So really, the repurchasing, if I had to summarize in a sentence, has to be a dynamic and agile system that is capable of adapting to your business as you scale. So if I had to just put it in a nutshell, I don't know if that was concise. That was a little bit ADD.
I mean, there was a bit in there. Regarding the seasonality and events, is that something that your tool kind of automatically knows? Okay, Prime Day is
Absolutely.
coming, and then, or do you have to enter?
The
Yeah,
system knows
absolutely.
that we won't necessarily know the factors of, like, for instance, we know that for us, we get a 5x boost during the holidays. Some people have much greater or much smaller. So for us, we
Gives you a
also
way to model it. That's
we have events like special events like record store days. So no, not at the moment. We're not necessarily the supply chain manager is responsible for inputting the seasonal coefficients. So for instance, for us, as I said, it was 5x. Someone's at my door. So the supply chain manager is responsible for seasonal coefficients. And the system is actually beginning to learn that. So we can see within the next year that this is all going to be introduced. So I think it's maintenance at my door. Just give me a second. Again, Francisco. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah,
This is
I wanted to say, so the platform does give us the possibility to model these events and to track them. What we do not give is the, let's say, the preset set of events. So that, as Eli was saying, this is a responsibility of the supply chain manager. But Skupreme, within its learning model
right.
for supply chain predictions, has the ability for you to input which seasonality or events may affect your business and may impact these high seasons or lining deals that you may put on your account.
Cool. So one thing I also thought about, I don't know if you tell me it makes sense or not, but considering the variations. So maybe when you give alerts to tell me, okay, repurchase that product, does it or should it consider how much stock I have of the other similar variation? And maybe it already knows, okay, from the past, when the main variation went out of stock, but the other variation was still there, the conversion rates didn't drop too much. So maybe in this case, it's not the biggest urgency to reorder the main product. Is that something that could be considered?
Sure.
So
The
Yeah.
variations do fall on a normal distribution, absolutely. And I think like one kind of caveat worth adding there is that when you're purchasing variations, there's an MOQ across all the variations. So there's a little bit of extra complexity when, for instance, say for us, we have an item that comes in 4 separate colors, but together we need to order a minimum of each color, and there's a minimum between all the colors. So
Right.
that slight complexity towards the math is also accounted for.
When you say it's also accounted for, you mean like where would I
So
put that?
So we're able to actually input, let's say we have an item with an MOQ of 1,000, but each color has an MOQ of 200. So in addition to what you were suggesting, it's also
Yeah.
accounting for variables like that.
Yeah, I guess it's part of the general information or PIM part of your tool.
Yes.
Just
as mentioned earlier, it interlinks and
yeah.
relates across the entire chain. So yeah, it's a way. And as well, for example, for the multi-channel, when you're talking sales, and it goes as well with the hand on hand with the not only sales history but the sales activity, and you want your platform to be able to see the sales activity on multi channels, which is really I would say one of the differentiating factors of Supreme is that if not the only one platform doing multi channel predictions.
Yeah, this one is certainly, I would say, the biggest in here, maybe. And that's why I gave it 5 points. But that's another topic. Yeah, let's maybe go to cash flow, which I think is a big topic in this whole inventory field. I don't know if Skupreme does anything with cash flow, showing you how much you've got left, and then kind of helping you decide, which products you should use it on.
Sure, it's very important for us from a finance perspective because we're doing our COGS based on Skupreme. So that's very important, knowing your COGS. Something that was previous to this very difficult for us to kind of calculate. We now have real-time COGS snapshots daily. We could also jump back in time. So I'd say that was one of our biggest, financial roadblocks, just in terms of like difficulties with our accountant. And in this case, we can just provide our accountant report, which makes their life so much easier.
I think I have a couple of things to add in there. So capital financing, big part of that is forecasting what's your next round of purchase orders going to look like, so you can plan ahead. And as well, capabilities that from Supreme we can say we're integrating, let's say, the ability to finance your purchase orders with viably. That's going to be a soon release, and as well the ability to pay for your purchase orders with air wallets. So it's all about as well versatility, be able to use different payment methods, be able to forecast for that financing or those financing needs, and as well have the methods to finance those
Yeah, I would
purchase
definitely
orders.
say that this is like a way deeper discussion as well because
Yeah.
there's like a lot of very interesting metrics. Like because we know the lead times, we know the buffer times, we can actually come up with metrics like cash to cash. So, for instance, if I'm placing a purchase order today and sending money to China, when do I get that cash back in the bank? So these are the kind of capabilities that a system like this permits. But there's also a ton of managerial. Like we can happy to do a demo next time because like for sure it goes infinitely deep. I do use the dashboard to make purchasing decisions, right? Because remember we're also keeping true landed costs for all of our items, true cost of goods sold. So when I'm looking at our profitability, I can I'd say for me it's the most holistic view of what's performing and how. So for a discussion for another day, but we can get into the interesting metrics that go into supply chain management. Another one being inventory turn time. Another one being there's a lot. So there's a lot of them, a lot of acronyms, but I'd say that's a good topic for next call.
Cool. Yeah, then I just have this next category here. I guess this is also we already talked about with the differentiator of Skupreme to many other inventory tools. So I guess you pretty much have a yes everywhere here. That you see the sales of everything coming together, right?
Yes.
And then what other marketplaces would you say are in there apart from these main ones?
I would say a big one right now, TikTok. That's
Yeah.
that's gonna be huge,
Right.
2024.
Yeah, we can send you the full list, but right now the one that's like the biggest impact for users is TikTok.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out later. Okay, then basic sales and profit analytics. I don't know if you go deeper into like, yeah, sales and profit analytics for real, like the typical profit tools do. Is
Yeah,
that
as I was
something?
speaking about earlier, so instead of this cost average thing, we actually do have like real true landed costs over time. I mean, remember, think about it, it's like a container's 12K and then a year later it's 2K or less. That changes the landed cost. Cost averaging it is not the most accurate way to do so. So for me, and as I said in our next discussion, I'm happy to go through the managerial accounting and the data we get from the system to make the decisions we make today. Um,
Yeah.
so happy to do.
And yeah, we can dive more into that, but just to throw some of the ideas that we currently implement, we do have a margin calculation. So what the margin on, or let's say ROI is, and as well we do, and this came as the result of a collaboration with one of multi-million dollar aggregators. We're now tracing the opportunity loss. So for the days that you're not in stock, how much money you're leaving on the table. So that's kind of as well some of the measurements that we have out there.
Yeah, the warehousing metrics are sometimes like a pretty interesting science. So I'll send you like a whole list of them later. Lots of acronyms, but super impressive stuff. Like
Would you
again,
say margin predictions is kind of also a part of it?
Margin
Or
is more like
calculator?
return on investment. So how profitable is a product compared
Yeah.
to the spend on the entire operation of selling the product.
So do you help predict that, or is it just like you enter a number
We
and then
help
it calculates for you?
No, we help you see that, and we help you analyze that. We analyze it for you, which is giving you what's, and it all relates to, um as much as you manage your supply chain within Supreme, the more information that Supreme has to actually calculate the cost of goods sold and all these information, Supreme will give you most accurate data in how much money are you actually making per product and how profitable is each product. And that has helped us as well make decisions on, okay, should we discontinue a product? Should we discontinue a variation of a product? Should we, in the next purchase order, should we reorder it again? So that's kind of the answers
Yeah.
that come up.
Cool. So in the name of time, I guess we skip maybe the external data. I'm not sure even that makes a lot of sense to have it in the same place in the same inventory management tool. So let's just go to the last area, which is catalog management. Maybe you just want to quickly talk about why that should be in an inventory management software. How does it help? What does Skupreme do?
uh, yeah, I mean, like simply put, it goes back to the philosophy of like a full vertically integrated supply chain. To have your catalog management outside of your supply chain, you're just missing data and missing opportunity. So for sure, it just goes back to our core belief systems of having everything in one place. And as an example, there are tools that out there that are great, and there's also terrible ones. But like for instance, I'd say on the great side, there's something like Channel Advisor, excellent tool. It works well within itself to synchronize and link your marketplaces. But then outside of that, you still need to be making predictions and you still need to make shipments to Amazon.
Yeah.
So that's where we start to say that the single point solutions fail at scale. You really do need one vertically integrated, wholesome solution to not just accomplish one thing, but everything, and then to allow you to scale with it.
Yeah. And talking on that vertical solution, catalog management for us is kind of where everything begins. So with a for a business, the core of its business is its catalog, right? So you want to have a catalog that's being used across the entire board. So that's for us. That's where it all starts. And proper catalog management involves um,
So what exactly
in
does Skupreme do when you have to make it concrete? What is the feature to help you with that?
centralized catalog management that keeps your multi-channel strategy centralized. So you can make inventory descriptions, images, or price changes from a single place.
Okay. So
Of
you
course,
can edit it once and it changes everywhere. Amazon, Walmart,
and of course,
Shopify.
remember, yeah, absolutely. And the first kind of points we were discussing earlier was that we're pulling all the data from the fulfillment network, which means that we're able to sync it to all the channels correctly. Uh, Huge pain point for us. We used to learn of a product going out of stock. It was like someone would message us like, "Hey, why didn't this order ship?" This was a while ago when we first started the business. But then it would start this manual process of changing all the listings, changing the inventory to zero. Skupreme does that all automatically. So by knowing all of our available inventory, it's able to sync it to our supply chain. It's able to prevent back orders.
Very cool. Sweet. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. I'll probably have to watch this video like 3 times again to fully understand
Oh
like
my,
every part of it.
yeah, those don't,
Um,
yeah, those cannot cover the supply chain in one video, but better
yeah,
yet,
no, I get that. Yeah, I probably underestimated just
But
on
how.
hey, to summarize that last point, multi account. Yes, you need that. Whatever software you're choosing, you
Yeah,
need to be able to not only do it for one brand, because if you're in e-commerce, most likely you're not capable of just doing one project. You need a couple brands. And so you're managing multiple brands. You need to be able to do so. So
yeah,
yeah, effective management of multiple brands.
yeah.
That is correct. It's not just managing one catalog, but many catalogs. I'd say actually majority of the people we interact with now have more than one brand, more than one workspace. So having the ability to just quickly toggle between them and just check out the supply chains, the catalogs at a glance, that's actually very important now because I'd say most of the people we're working with have. We just recently launched a second brand. I just couldn't conceive of a way to be toggling. Between these two brands without the systems we have.
All right. And maybe just to finish the left part here, pricing, do you also consider that as part of catalog? Do you also edit all the prices in one go for every channel? Is that also
Yes.
possible?
We have price rules, so
Oh, you also
you can
okay.
just sync one price across all, or you could create customized price rules on a marketplace level. There's a lot of flex. I mean, there's any flexibility you want there. So um, everybody just builds their own price rules around their own preferences. Um, so for sure,
Sweet.
yeah, that's I'd say a roadblocker. If you can't add price rules and you're doing omni-channel management, you're probably losing money.
Sweet. All right. That was quite a bit, guys. I think we've covered a lot. So unless you have like one big addition now, one thing we forgot about Skupreme that maybe nobody else offers. Now's the time to mention it, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess it's idioms and sayings for us. It's like for us, we do believe like your supply chain is as strong as its weakest link. So if there's anything here that anybody missed, everything is capable of falling apart around it. So really, despite the fact it was maybe a long, like information deep discussion, having that kind of insight and knowing this ahead of time is, I guess it goes back to anticipating needs versus reacting to catastrophe. So that there's like no in middle ground. There's like it's just one or the other. So really, I do value your time and I thank you for having this discussion. And I hope we can continue the discussion because really, I personally don't see much information out there on these topics, and so I think that we can really
Yeah.
do a great job.
Yeah, I realized how much I don't know today because there is still a lot with this inventory
I
topic.
wanted to thank you for your time and like thank you for the for anytime you wanna. I actually think it's really valuable for us to discuss these topics because supply chain, it's a chain. You cannot see it as a particular links, and you cannot fix particular points at what you need from a platform is you need to be able to handle the entire chain comprehensively without having to toggle tabs, multiple applications, multiple subscriptions. So that's kind of the happy to do this anytime with you as well, David. So thank you. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, and just to maybe mention it, obviously you saw it in the ticker below, but yes, you will find a 10% discount for Skupreme lifetime, amazingly, in the link below. And I think you find it's a very complete tool, very robust tool that pretty much handles everything you could wish for, as far as I can tell. But they're still working on the other stuff that they don't have. Yeah. Any final words?
We're always working on new stuff. The product was
Oh,
built.
what's the next thing that you're like next big thing maybe people can
Oh,
look forward to?
well, first, anything comes from the needs of users. So initially, what was my brand then became aggregators and agencies. And lately, we've been working with a lot of 3PLs. So some things planned for the new year, we're going to be releasing a WMS system. So that system actually allows you to track warehouses. And I'm not sure if it was brought up, but actually a supply chain calendar. So almost like your Google Calendar, but you could just put all your supply chain activities in it, and then it translates to your predictions. So I mean, there's probably even more that I can't think of off the top of my head, but even the first points we discussed with Amazon changing its dynamics, there's actually it's not even just software. There's actually ways our brand is managing our supply chain that's saving us a ton of money and time. Again, conversation for next time, but for instance, something like the drip feed. This is a new technique that we've started implementing. And so excited to speak about these opportunities and just different techniques we're using next time. Of course, part of it is cool, but I'd say a large part of it is the strategy and the techniques you're applying. The tool is nothing unless you're able to actually sometimes, be creative and kind of come up with innovative solutions. Because as noted, this is just constantly adapting and changing.
I would just say that the biggest thing that for the future, the next release that supply chain experts and supply chain professionals in the industry can expect from Skupreme is the WMS. That's going to be a huge one, and it's going to change the way that warehouses manage and interconnect with brand owners, brand operators, and basically streamline their processes and automate a ton of the interaction.
Okay, for those of us that don't know what WMS is, can you?
Oh, this means a warehouse management system, and it's essentially the way that the warehouse manages the inventory from kind of the back end. Is what the warehouse sees and what you need when we were talking about visibility, and you want to have visibility into what's going on with the warehouse as a brand owner.
Right.
This is the place where the warehouse creates that visibility for you and allows you
Okay.
that level of control to automate shipments.
I think
basically handle your logistics.
Yeah, we must have a glossary somewhere, so we can we'll attach it. If we come across that, for sure, lots of acronyms. But hey, that's what's so interesting. None of this stuff is in textbooks. None of this stuff is taught in college. So we have the opportunity to actually consolidate and share this information, which I think is a great opportunity for all of us.
All right, cool. Thanks so much, guys. That was a ton of information. And if anybody who's watching the YouTube video later on, you can, of course, ask questions. I won't be able to answer them probably, but I'll send them to Eli and Francisco, and hopefully they will answer them for me.
Send them our way.
And again, the reminder, you'll find a 10% lifetime discount for Skupreme down below as well. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for the discussion, guys. It was a lot. So respect to anybody who watched the whole thing, but I'm sure you learned a lot. And yeah, with that, Merry Christmas, I guess, and Happy New Year.
Have a good one, man.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, look, the cat came out. All right, good time.
My cat. See you guys.